a World Championship final on your debut.
Yeah.
In a tournament where you weren't even sure what the heck was going to happen. Travel the world, see the world, play darts, become world champion. That's the bit that most people don't get to do.
I started doing commentary because Sid left. Sid was so disgusted that a Canadian could win, he left for the PDC. The aspect of having lost the final so heavily, but also the aspect of it closed the split circle. 9 years later, I've won the PDC.
Yeah. You've done, because do you feel there was
I
always
got a big thank you message from Bobby.
Yeah.
He said, all the flack I've had over the years for losing to you. Thank you for shutting them up, or something to that effect.
Did you get on with Mr. Taylor?
Well, even in the practice room, doing the bull. I lose the bull to Phil in 2001. He makes me go first. I think, all right, you son of a gun. Yeah, it was weird. I was playing a guy in the final who had beaten the guy he should have never beaten, who was also the guy who had beaten the guy he should have never beaten.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dart Show podcast. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the greatest North American ever to throw a dart. It is Canada's own John Park, three-time world champion. John, thank you very much for joining us. You'll see from my extensive preparation for our chat, I've written your name on a piece of paper and then left it blank. Quite frankly, if I'd come up with any sort of structure or plan for this, I imagine you'd go completely off-piste anyway, so there'd be no point in doing it.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not going anywhere but off-road.
Right. Let's go back to the beginning, shall we? I mean, you've got an astonishing career in darts, but was it always darts? Because let's be honest, Canada, America, it's got a history in the game, but it's still a very, very niche sport.
Yeah, it is really, and I didn't get into it through friends or family or anything. And let's thank television. For one, we would get some stuff on our stations at the time, which I think at the time was TSN was around, because cable came in the early 80s. And, so TSN was the Canadian version, I guess you'd say, of ESPN, which I don't know if that means a lot to you over here. But,
I think
I know there's versions of everything now, and everything's changed ownership and all this sort of stuff over the years. But in any case, the main point being, I think it was the darts might have even been on CBC at times, which is our version of BBC.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't on a whole lot, and I don't know that it was live even, ever. We still have that issue with broadcast television, that we don't get live darts, which would really help growth. But certainly the streaming is good these days. But in any case, just from what I saw, I liked the game. It was a good pressure game. I used to watch golf. I'd play golf. But I'm a big sports fan. I watch all sports, and I still do.
So what sort of age were you when darts first appeared on your radar?
Well, I might have been. We had a dartboard in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was my father's dartboard, one of these really lousy black and yellow kind.
Uh-huh.
You're probably familiar with them. Yeah. So there was the plastic darts, and I kind of abused them as just a toy to throw something for my youth, my childhood.
Mm.
But you never played darts. Didn't know what darts was.
Yeah. I always see that. There's so many dartboards in America. You see them in TV shows and in films and everything. Like, it's a staple part of American and Canadian life. And yet, it's not really taken seriously as a game. But before we get into that, what was it like growing up in Canada? What was your early life like?
Great. I loved it.
Good at school?
Yeah, I guess it came easily. Leave things to the last second. You do them the night before, all this. I could get away with that. I was smart enough that I could get away with that for the most part. But, you'd have to pull the all-nighters and this and that. But that's how it goes when you're always leaving it to procrastinating, I guess, was a skill.
Mm-hmm.
But still not being late. So that was...
Doing just enough, the bare minimum.
Bare minimum,
by.
And I probably did that even more when I spent a few years in university. But yeah, now I enjoyed sports at school. I played for a few of the school teams that would play against other teams, but I didn't like that so much because I just wanted to play. Mm-hmm. So if you played intramural sports inside of the school, you could just go out after you were done school and you go just start the sport you wanted to play, whether it was rugby or softball,
hockey,
or cricket. I didn't do cricket. We could do cricket at the school I was at, but
really, in Canada?
Hockey's a good example. Yeah, well, I went to a private school, so
okay,
so it was very, very, hoity-toity sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, what was the plan then? You do school, good. University, yeah. What was it? What was John Park gonna do?
I had no plan. I had nothing. I improvised. Could you guess that I improvised my life? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the blank page of preparation's entire sympathy for John Park. Okay, so
why pigeonhole yourself?
Well, okay, yeah. Give yourself options, right?
Yeah, I didn't know what I didn't. Nothing really took me. But I want to like cure something or do this or that or go into space. It was all these childhood fantasies of illusions of grandeur. Let's put them. I didn't have a single kind of one like that really.
And drifting through and seeing what happened.
I guess they would have been all sports oriented.
Yeah,
but as I was saying, I was more interested in just playing the games than I was actually focusing on being really good until I got involved with I was playing a lot of pool and snooker and darts as a teenager in my recreational time. But the thing I could do at home was the darts, and I could throw for an hour to put some Leonard Skinner on something and just get better at throwing without really knowing a whole lot about the game. And so that was, I think the availability of it really helped me get good at it.
I think a lot of the thing I find in speaking to people who've become very good in most sports, but darts as well, it becomes quite almost an addictive or an obsessive kind of thing because it's honing a skill and doing it for every day or an extended period of time. You really do throw yourself into it. Were you like that, or were you just drift back and forth in and out of it?
No, I would say I threw like every day for the most part for an hour maybe, and I enjoyed that. And I wouldn't say I had the whip out. It was more a relaxation, a meditation, an escape. Once you have your routine of what you want to do as well, whatever games or procession of routines you want to go through, it becomes a little mindless in a sense of you can just get into, like I said, I'd have music on and just be very chilling and good that way. But you could still focus inside of that in terms of, you had to be good. I mean, obviously it's not easy to throw a dart.
It's difficult to throw them well, but that seems quite at odds, that idea of having it as a relaxation thing, even a meditative thing, and then actually going in one-on-one playing competitive darts. When did that sort of start happening for you?
Well, yeah, I joined a league in Toronto in 1989-90 season, would have started in September. But I went to a tournament in Oshawa, where I live now, in June of that year, and I saw Bob Sneed playing, who I'd seen on television. And obviously I saw a lot of dart players. I didn't really know who they were, but I could tell they played pretty good at this and that. And I played the singles event. As you may know, there are events over there, there's lots of pairs and other events too. But at that point, I think I played what they call the blind draw pairs and on the Friday night, and then I played a singles, and that was it for me. But so that was '89 when I, really got into anything competitive, A, with the tournament, and then B, joining a league. And I was in the habit of going to this pub, the Unicorn Pub in Toronto, looking to find people to play at that point, because I wanted to test myself against quote unquote real dart players.
Yeah.
Whether they be pub players, tournament, whatever. Anybody.
Did you have any idea?
I wanted to know how good I was because I'd been throwing for a few years at home, and I had no idea.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask. You've got no idea really how good you are. I'm guessing you're just watching the stuff on the telly from the Lakeside or whatever, and then you're throwing along at home.
Well, I think, and I said there's always a benefit that my expectation of how I should throw, even at the earliest stages, was based on what I saw on television. So
It's a high bar.
I learned the game of my expectation was, and it's in the 80s still, you got to hit a ton, right? You got to hit a ton at least, right? If you throw a ton of turn, you're good. Mm-hmm. So, but I think some people that learn the game in the pub from their friends or something, and the first darts they see for a while is all just the poor darts.
Yeah.
That's what their expectation of the game is. So I think I benefited by having the highest available expectation of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you're comparing yourself to world champions when you even start
out. Not that I
could
do it, but that's just my vision of how it's supposed to be played. Because I do imagine if you've only ever seen it in a pub and how that's the best thing you have. You have no idea they can play better.
So how long did you find out you were good?
I did. I was competing with like the best guys in the pub. You'd play for a pint or something, and that's just the truest litmus test, right? You have to have something on the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the ultimate prize. Yeah.
A, to get something out of yourself, and B, to make sure you're getting something out of your opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. Because they're not gonna give you a pint. Right? Hey, John, I really enjoyed your company. Yeah, I didn't get that response too often when I won. Yeah.
So at this point, you're just playing for fun. You joined the league. Are you working at this point?
Yeah, I was probably still a little of both. I think I was still treading water in university, and might have had a sales job of some kind. I went through 3 or 4. Maybe they didn't overlap actually, but yeah, that's what I think of back then. Basically, I had nothing going that was really getting me anywhere, but yeah, I was busy in daytimes.
You're busy in daytimes. It paid the bills.
I was trying, yeah.
Yeah. What's the weirdest stuff you sold? Sold anything weird, or was it all quite boring stuff?
Oh, I estate agent. I got the license for that. I tried that a bit, but I was just too young, and I truthfully didn't really know enough.
Yeah.
And no matter what you book learn, you kind of, it doesn't come across unless you truly have some confident knowledge, especially with all the financing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
As good as you are, it can be at numbers. It's a whole other world, right? So, but yeah, no, I didn't really have anything too good. I did spend a year in accounting program the second year at U of T, and because I had switched out of the chemical engineering in the hopes that maybe the accounting would be good. I didn't like accounting because although I was good with math, I found that it was just all a bunch of rules that made no sense to me, so I didn't like them. It didn't make mathematical sense to me or logical sense. It was the basic premise was all rules that somebody came up with that you had to follow, and you can imagine how that went with me.
John Part doesn't do rules.
I don't do rules. Yeah, the late Tommy Cox knew that very well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll get to your various run-ins with the disciplinary authorities. But you started playing, you figure out you're good, and then when do you start thinking, I could earn a few quid off this?
Well, yeah, I'd go to these weekend events and stuff, and I was competing with people rather quickly. I think in the fall of '89, November. I think there was a tournament in Buffalo, New York, and it was the last of a series of Lucky Lights ones that were leading towards the Challenge of Champions used to have in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, that might be, no, it was 1990, sorry, yeah, so about a year in, 1990, and I got to this Challenge of Champions, and the last possible gasp of qualifying for it by winning a pairs with a fellow, Mike Mutumbirwa, who was kind of a mentor locally, one of them, and so anyway, I got the chance to go to New York. I went to New York, and I ended up playing the likes of, it was similar. They had 3 chances of qualification, 3 knockout rounds, or maybe even 4. And I was the match to win to get through every single time.
Yeah.
And then I finally got through the last one.
Okay.
But there was the likes, one of the people I played there was Leighton Reese.
Presumably a guy you'd only seen on the telly before.
Yeah, or I knew of him. I don't even know if I'd seen him play, but I knew he was the first world champ and this and that. And he was, I don't think he was there quite seriously competing. I think he was enjoying himself and well, he, as he had earned the right. And because it was all part of a trip for all the British people, that they would go to New York for the Challenge of Champions, and then they would bus everyone down to Atlantic City for the Darts America tournament, which was BDO ranked.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very useful at the time because it was just pre-split, and so everybody wanted BDO points. And so in any case, I think it was quite a nice little trip for the British contingent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were invited in basically on the basis of being the best in the world, because obviously it was a North American sort of thing, but it was heavily populated by the British in terms of the players. So, we were basically, it was our chance to mix it up in a televised sort of a way, and it was in New York City. It wasn't. I don't know if it was televised now. Well, I lost to Eric in the end.
Eric Bristow.
Yeah.
I mean, and presumably, again, this is the first time you've set foot in a room with these kind of megastars.
Well, no, I'd been in other BDO ranked tournaments in 1990, I think in Dallas, Chicago, Canadian Open in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So I was somewhat familiar with a few of them, and I think I did fairly well in all of those things, enough that...
So you're making a name for yourself.
They sort of might. Some of them might have had an idea of beginning to cotton into that I might be able to play.
What was your attitude going into those tournaments with these guys? You only seen them on the telly. You know they're the best in the world. Your bloke has basically taught yourself to throw darts at home, and you're only just getting any kind of idea about whether you can mix it with these guys. Is there any apprehension there? Is there any nerves or anxiety, or you just free roll? Let's go and see what happens.
There was plenty of nerves coming in to just play anybody for a start. That's the one thing you also don't know when you're yourself home taught. I mean, you can't simulate that feeling of playing somebody. I mean, we're talking about an era where there was no such thing as internet darts or even the machines where you could play against the machine.
Yeah.
Basically, you played against a pad of paper and a number of darts, if you wanted to do something like that, which is one of the things I would do, just so to make sure I'm playing to a level. But so you really had no idea. But I just took every success forward. Like, well, if you can do this, you can do that. Why not? You can always take another step, in my mind.
That's a step along the way. When was the first time you left North America to compete in darts? It wasn't the Lakeside, was it, in 94? Had you left North America before that?
Well, in terms of coming to England, I actually came to the Masters at Earl's Court there in 93.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big step, isn't it? That's it's one thing travelling around North America playing darts, even against some great players. So to then go, actually, I'm going to cross the Atlantic.
Yeah, that was my first time in England.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a month and a half before.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did come for that first embassy, I came as well for the British Open, which was also at Earl's Court, just after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a bit of a longer trip, I guess, and was able to become acclimated. So that wasn't a bad thing in the end, I guess.
Well, let's talk about 94 then, because that's where, at that point, are you convinced you've qualified for the World Championship, your first World Championship, you're going to be going up against all the greats, you go in there thinking, yes, I'm good enough to beat these. I can win this. You've convinced yourself over those few years of playing tournaments and trying to take it more seriously. Are you thinking, yes, this is me, I can do this, I've got nothing to be worried about with any of these?
I didn't know. I knew some of the people. I knew the ones that traveled. And also, don't forget, it was the split. And the split happened, and I knew there was a bunch of guys that were really good that weren't in it because they were doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew also, as it all worked out, I was playing the number 2 seed was against someone who had played it probably 3-4 times already. It was Ronnie Baxter. And where we kind of shared results. and he was a very strong player, and I knew that. And I think, obviously before I played him, I felt like, well, I think I can compete with him, and if I can compete with him and he's the number 2 seed, then I should be able to compete with anybody. That's what I was kind of thinking. And well, the primary task was, to get past Ronnie. I mean, that first round obviously is always hard anywhere, but when you get the number 2 seed, and I think in this case, being familiar with him maybe helped me.
The thing is, it's your first World Championship. You take out the number 2 seed, but it's an absolute domination of a campaign, isn't it? Do you lose one set in that entire tournament? Is that it?
Yeah, I lost to Ronnie Sharp in the semi.
Yeah, one set in the entire tournament.
That was, nobody found my Achilles heel as a rookie was, if I went anywhere deep into a match, who knows? I could lose it. I had no idea. I mean, because I'd never been that much pressure under cameras and stuff.
What was the pressure
I
like?
found sometimes I found just finishing the set tough. I mean, I didn't exactly close out the writing was on the wall I was going to win, and I still had to struggle to get to 5-5 to win at the end with Bobby, right? So I was still that nervous about it, even though it was pretty much assured.
You spent all week winning pretty much every set you played, and yeah, it's still a World Championship. But what were your feelings like during that campaign? Because you go in there going, I don't know. I've played Ronnie Baxter. He's the number 2 seed. I don't really know. But as the week goes on, the day goes on, and you're just going 3-0, 3-0, 4-0. You must be thinking, I'm the best player here. I did feel pretty confident. And, I was helped. I played Paul Lim the second round. Another person I knew pretty well. Very well, in fact. I was actually playing with him at times in pairs by then, just starting to. So my quarterfinal, the third match I had was someone I didn't know at all. Was Steve McCullum from Kent. He was kind of the hot commodity as the tournament was progressing, and he was doing the Meatloaf impersonation thing, and it was Bad Outta Hell was the walk on, and he was looking good. He was hitting a lot of 140s, 180s, and it was all about him when we played, in terms of the build up and the hype, and I thought, okay, well, I know I need to play well here, and I did. I played I was probably my best game by the numbers. A lot of 140s, hit my outs, I met the challenge well, and so I was very pleased with that game, probably more than any of them that year. So what was it like being in the final? Bobby George, final, a World Championship final on your debut.
Yeah.
In a tournament where you weren't even sure what the heck was going to happen.
Yeah. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea why I was there. But I remember doing the interview for BBC prior, where they go on the lakeside grounds, and I think I'm walking beside the pond, and and I remember saying, well, I just don't know if you just don't know if you'll ever get the chance again, which is, so you want to try and make the most of it, right? It's an unknown commodity. I might never be in a World Championship final again. I might not ever be in a World Championship again. I guess it was probably assured at that point in terms of the video, because I think the top 4 got back. Yeah, basically it is a thing, though, where you don't take these chances mildly. You better make the most of them.
World champion, that moment, that must live with you. Like, that must be an incredible feeling to be able to look back on that week, on that match, on that winning dart, on that, and the culmination of your little fun side project of throwing darts, see how good I can get at this, and in your first go, you're a world champion.
Well, I think by the time I'd had a solid 4 years on the road, and a lot of weekends driving away, flying away, and there was a body of work into it. I wasn't just out of the library and onto the thanks for the check. It was there was a pretty solid body of work in there. And in fact, we didn't bring up, as I played in, because you asked me what else I'd done, because it was on American soil. I didn't really think of it, but the World Cup for the BDO was in Vegas in I guess it was September, October of that '93 as well. And I had success there with Carl Mercer winning the pairs for Canada. So I guess, the idea of winning at an international level wasn't foreign to me. So, I was not
Still some
purely
journey.
innocent thing with no clue as to what Big Bad Wolf was going to eat me. I knew the sharks were in the water.
Still some journey to have gone on in that relatively short period of time, though, isn't it? That sort of late 80s, early 90s, that development of you from a enthusiast and good player to world champion at your first crack.
Yeah, it was. And you asked me what I was doing with my life, and I didn't really have anything too overwhelmingly that I was passionate about or that I was working at, and I think, and you're saying about that length of time, and as it happened, and it wasn't like it was at the forefront of my thoughts or anything, but I think pretty much when I started, so let's say by the end of '89, beginning of '90, I sort of had the number in my head of, okay, give it 5 years. If you're going to go away and do all this, just to see how good you are. I don't know why. Maybe someone else put that number in my head. I don't even remember why, but I got that world title within that 5 years. And so I guess that kind of locked me into the thought, well, I guess I'm wasting my time well enough that I can continue on down this road without veering off of the path. So I kind of, winning the embassy in '94 probably sealed my fate, one way or the other.
No backing out of it now.
Yeah, I kind of thought, I gotta just keep going along now. I didn't want to give it up. I really enjoyed it for a start. I was competing and playing a game and the travel part of it. It was all, an attractive prospect for a young fella.
Yeah. Travel the world,
Sure.
see the world, play darts, become world champion. That's the bit that most people don't get to do.
Yeah, and so it was good. It was great, and it got harder. It got harder after that.
Well, it did get harder, and I would imagine that having become world champion, you just think, well, there we go. This is it. This is the passport to success that I have. I've proven I can do it. Doesn't always go smoothly. And the next few years were difficult, weren't they? At times.
They were and they weren't. In terms of North America and Canada, I was doing very well at being number one. I was traveling enough inside for Canadian tournaments to get the Canadian ranking because I mentioned Carl, who we won the pairs together in Vegas, but we were the most polarized rivals. He was living in Saskatchewan somewhere at the time, and he's west and I'm east, and kind of different personality types, etc. And well, we were heavy rivals, and he pushed hard for number one. I think he got it at one point for a little bit, and I think I got it back. I think I had it, and he got it, and I got it back again. But that was always going on, and so I fared pretty well in that, as I've just said. And I was also playing at least, 15 U.S. tournaments a year. Just it would have been. I don't know if there was a ranking that mattered. At that point, I think the BDO dropped the ranking because of the split. But although I wasn't in the WDC, I was in their ranking. They were calling me up and asking. It was a very awkward and horrible situation because you kind of want to take every opportunity, of course. And I wasn't entirely thrilled with everything on the BDO side of things. I mean, they came up with one new televised tournament, and I wasn't eligible because it was a European where they decided only Europeans could play. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I was doing very well in all those tournaments in America and Canada, and I was traveling to some opens in the BDO around trying to get the rankings there and be a world champ and stuff, and it was some mixed success, not overly successful. There was obviously a lot of travel, and it was new, and there wasn't a lot of money reward, so it wasn't very lucrative. There was no one paying my way or anything, so it was all coming out of anything I won already or was going to win. And so it was quite difficult. And I never lost first round in the embassy again, but I always lost second round. So it wasn't great. I played 3 more, And so thanks to my domestic success, if you would have caught that, in North America, I was able to still be throwing very well. I think I was getting better as a player. It just wasn't translating across the pond.
John Park, mid to late 90s, you've already got your one world championship in the bag, but new pastures are calling, right? PDC.
Yes, I finally did make the shift. In Circus Tavern, on my birthday, I defected officially. June 29th of 1997.
Difficult thing to do because it was such a politicised and quite angry scene, wasn't it? There's a lot of very strong emotions from everybody involved. Was it a difficult thing to do?
Well, yes. Yeah, I mean, and of course, as it all went, from the start of me being the world champ in '94, and of course, I was very grateful to Imperial Tobacco as the sponsors, and I felt that I got a lot of money that I'd never seen before like that, and I felt I owed them something loyalty-wise, if not the BDO, but you got at least the sponsors are always the most important, and so I was basically said how grateful I was and that I'd be back and I stuck to that. And then I stuck to it some more, and I started to get the actual I started doing commentary because Sid left. Sid was so disgusted that a Canadian could win, he left for the PDC.
You were going with the final nail in his...
Yeah. I was like, I can't believe my Geordie eyes. I'm out of here.
Did you enjoy doing the commentary straight away?
Yeah, I did, because I sort of, as I said, I watched a lot of sports, so I kind of had sporting heroes like in the various sports, but I also when I had commentators I liked better than others and listening to, and kind of was picking up this and that without ever any idea that I would ever be in a similar kind of situation for any reason. But I had an awareness of it, so I guess that helped me.
Well, we'll get to the commentary thing, because obviously you're now one of the main men behind the microphone in the sport. But the PDC move, I mean, you've been in so many major finals. You've won some of the most astonishing games, but it hasn't always been plain sailing. The fact to have lost to Phil Taylor so heavily in a World Championship final and then come back and beat him in a World Championship final, I mean, is that your greatest achievement?
Yes, that's definitely, and the aspect of having lost the final so heavily, but also the aspect of it closed the split circle. 9 years later, I've won the PDC.
Yeah, you've done, because do you feel there was? I
got a big thank you message from Bobby.
Yeah,
he said, all the flack I've had over the years for losing to you. Thank you for shutting them up, or something to that effect.
Did you feel there were question marks over you then when you came to the PDC, and particularly after that first World Final against Taylor, the 7-0? Did you feel that, because there was certainly people who would say, "Oh, well, you can discount BDO players; they don't count." Well, there was still, apart Taylor aside, who was obviously head and shoulders, it was pretty comparable for a long while in terms of the talent pool, wasn't it?
It was always hard to say because they were so distinctly separated, except there was an exceptional year or two where there was a few co-ranked tournaments. But aside from that, I think it was only 1 year even, but it still had this apples and oranges quality to everything. I mean, you could look at the numbers and all that, but you just don't know until somebody's playing somebody else how they're going to deal with it or how they're going to feel or handle it. So, yeah, I mean, you could say on the averages, certainly you could see quality on both sides. And some would argue you could see more depth of quality on the BDO side. But that would probably make sense due to the very rich county system at the time, which was the only sort of pool. And I think, obviously we could say that PDC figured that out and came up with things like the Challenge Tour and Development Tour and stuff. And so that sort of replaced that as a need. It doesn't mean it replaces it as something which can produce a good player, but it replaces the need that that's the only place they come from.
Well, talk to us about your World Championship final appearances. Obviously, the first one, Taylor just does Phil Taylor things to you, and that's got to be a very sobering experience, I would imagine. But then to be the same man in an absolute thriller, and to be involved in that mad tournament where you end up playing Kirk Shepherd in the final. I mean, what were those 3 distinct tournaments like for you?
Well, the Taylor ones, I could summarize my feelings, and what I think of the most is the first leg of each of them.
Right.
And the first leg of 2001, well, even in the practice room, doing the bull, I lose the bull to Phil in 2001. He makes me go first. So I think, all right, you son of a gun. I'm ready for you. I missed the bull for 12-dart leg with the throw. He takes it out on a 12-dart leg on the bull. And they never look back. Well, 2003, I win the bull. I make him go first, and exactly the same happens in reverse. He misses the bull for a 12-dart leg to hold throw, and I take it on the 12-dart to break him. And I don't look back for 3 sets. I build up a 3-set to no lead. And that just gave me enough into the match that even though I eventually fell behind in the match, I still had enough confidence that I could come back again, because I was that deep into it that I was near enough a finish line that I could deal with it. But yeah, I mean, I'll just always remember what he did to me. Like you said, the things Taylor does to people, right? Mm-hmm. Just to totally get in their head. Well, I was able to return the favor, and to some tune, I think, because how did I manage to reel off 3 consecutive sets? It must have been in his head a bit. That I turned the tables on him with that whole bull trick.
That's good. That takes some cojones, doesn't it, John, to be able to do it?
Well,
but is that what
I was that mad about it that I just had to try it back, you know? Anything you can do, I can do better thing. I probably knew you couldn't throw like a million darts as well as he could throw a million darts, but I could certainly get him in the short course.
Yeah, the short course of 13 sets.
Yeah,
but it's still quite a long
or the one leg, the first leg even. Just let me win that one leg and I'll feel happy. But that it happened exactly in reverse with us both going for 12-dart legs. And, you know, let's remember that that was a standard. You know, we often talk about how great the standard is now, and we've been, we're doing this around the Grand Slam, and there's been a lot of great 11 and 12-dart legs at the right times and stuff. But this, it's not new.
No, absolutely not.
We were doing this in big pressure situations 20 years ago, and they were doing it before that.
I'd imagine it must be very different to your World Championship finals. Obviously, your debut, Bobby George, he was a big name in the game, still is, to be fair. But he'd reached World Finals before and had won things before, and you were the debutant. 2 of your 3 PDC World Finals, you were against Phil Taylor, the greatest and most successful player that's ever lived. The other one, the Kirk Shepherd one, what a weird tournament. And at that point, people are looking at you going, oh, you're the heavy favourite here. That's like a different situation to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, it was weird. I was playing a guy in the final who had beaten the guy he should have never beaten, who was also the guy who had beaten the guy he should have never beaten. Because Wayne beat Phil, and then Kirk beat Wayne. It was like, what's going on here? I didn't mind it. I thought, okay. I'd had 2 finals with Phil already, so I knew that was always going to be really hard. So I didn't mind it didn't pan out for the 3rd time around, because I'm pretty sure he wanted to win the best of 3 there. And but the best way to avoid losing it is to not be in it. And and then Wayne, I absolutely believed it was going to be Wayne and I, and we had a fairly decent rivalry. We were pretty 50-50-ish, I think, in results and televised results. And that would have been something very interesting, because the contrasting stage personas. But no, it turned out it was Kirk. And then I just said, okay, well, I know I'm the heavy favorite now. And I know just about every player before me that's played Kirk in this event has blown it one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So I took that I didn't take it for granted at all. I took it as seriously as I could. Mm-hmm. just went to bed as early as I could. Just did everything by the book. That wasn't complacent in the least. I just didn't want to fall into that trap. And plus, I knew he had a big edge with the fitness, and it is a long old final. And I didn't want to get deep into it where he's feeling great and I'm really getting tired because I'm not sure if the semis were the night before or 2 nights before. Now I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I was wary of that even. So I was happy to get out to a really good start in the final.
I mean, that was your third world title, but the second one beating Taylor, that must feel like I've completed this game now. I've done the hardest possible thing it is to do. Did you feel like anybody was paying attention back home? Because North America has been, Canada and the USA, has been an area where professional darts has wanted to be big, to really get a foothold. And they've had their iconic player, a player who's done everything, a figurehead, a totem, something to go, look, you've even got one of your own players you can cheer on. And it must be frustrating that it hasn't really taken hold as perhaps the sport would have liked.
Well, I can give you the best example of why it hasn't and why it has elsewhere. And that is, simply enough, Barney. And when he started winning, and even when I was playing, actually, there was a few Dutch guys there with the flag hauling for part, actually, when I won in '94. But the thing is, they had access to BBC, just beaming right across the channel, I guess, or whichever sea, and so they could watch it all. Whereas nobody in Canada could watch me play. They could hear about a result in the paper, or they could see me on a talk show the morning after, but there's no engagement there. There was no chance for anyone to develop a love for the game or any clue what it's even really about if they didn't already play. But whereas in Holland, as soon as Barney was something, then they had the access always from the BBC, but then they also had the Dutch channels coming in and showing stuff live. And as I mentioned much earlier in this podcast, we've just never had live broadcast of darts. And it's very difficult to engage and to be interested when you don't know what's going to be on and, okay, when's it on next, like you do here. That's not part of it. I mean, for the most part, most of the darts we'd get on television in Canada, and I'm not even sure about the U.S. even got as much as we do. I think we took more of it because of our British connection, but most of it would be airing months later with sort of random times. And so someone might watch it to see what darts is all about, but there's certainly no engagement about, well, I'm all tense about who's going to win or whatever. And then for the most part, you'd see it, and you had no way of figuring out, because there was no internet, you had no way of figuring out what happened after that in any case. So it was pretty poor that way at the time. And it still is in a way, because the streaming's there, but the streaming will service all the darts people that like darts already. But I find it very hard to believe it'll bring new people interest into the darts.
I mean, do you ever can you foresee a future where it can get to a level where the next John Park comes out of the USA or Canada and he actually does capture the imagination of that territory to a greater degree than you're able to do, just because people can engage with it?
Yeah, it's really difficult without that sort of backing of, well, the television, for one thing, but also the print media covering the television coverage. So basically, that they work hand in hand. I guess these days it's just not just print; it's the electronic. They're the same thing essentially at this point. But yeah, I think people need a support system in order to follow something. They need to be able to reference something easily, and just to be prodded by something as well, that, hey, this is going on, and don't forget this, and a lot of that sort of thing. And I don't see why people wouldn't be interested in the game once they understood it, because there's a lot of pressure in it. And I think most people enjoy it. It's that gladiatorial quality of somebody's gets, they either kill somebody or they get their head lopped off, and it's as brutal is that as far as pressure goes? Because the simplest thing, like hitting a double 16 or something, which you could do with your eyes closed probably, all of a sudden you've missed 6-9 darts at doubles, and after you got there in 9, I think if you understand how preposterous that is, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, you use the word preposterous. It's an inherently ridiculous game. A lot of the time played by inherently ridiculous players. Of all the people that you have played with and befriended along the way in your time in professional darts, John, I would imagine many of them are absolutely bonkers. What are your favourite memories of your times in this sport?
Oh, well, on the board or off the board or
Either.
Gee,
Anything.
It's
It's a life in darts, John. It's a big question.
Shoot me now.
Well, not even your favourite one. I mean, you must have had some run-ins because it can get pretty heated as well. Like, it is a competitive environment, and you're all trying to steal money out of each other's pockets. Did you get on with Mr. Taylor?
Oh, off the board, certainly.
Mm.
Certainly, yeah.
I remember there was it the UK Open you played him, and it went all the way down to extra legs, and he disappeared.
Oh, we had on-stage problems. Not really where we were engaging each other, but he had this, yes, as you're referencing, he had this rather annoying habit of taking breaks when there weren't one. And the most preposterous of all of them was, there was one leg left in a UK Open match, and I think it was a quarterfinal. And, we'll see you later, Phil, then. All right. So I asked Russ Bray, who was officiating, can I go? And he says, no. I'm like, what? He said, no, because he didn't know what was going on either. And like, he's trying to get him to turn around or whatever. I'm like, okay. And of course, he won that next leg. So,
How much? I mean, look.
But he did it at a world championship. And I think he did it one other place as well to me, where there was not supposed to be a break, and he took one. But
do you think that was on purpose? Do you think it was mind
he may have just needed the toilet. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Generally, when these sorts of things happened, I would kind of inside my head just like laugh at any attempt to put me off. I mean, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty pathetic. Right? I try to think that way so that anything that was meant to get at me like that was if it was that intent, that it wouldn't work that way, that it would only work against them. I tried to be like that. But I think in that instance, the one we're referencing with the final leg at whatever round that was, the UK Open, the quarters or something, there was more to the story. I believe I had like a 6 or 7-1 lead as well at one point. So, I've already had plenty of time to think about how wrong things have gone. Right? So I don't think it helped much, that last leg. Yeah, probably.
What are your favourite memories from your career? I mean, obviously beating Taylor in a world final has got to be one. You've got 3 world championships, but are there other ones that stand out that perhaps people might not immediately think of as the definitive John Parr moments?
Well, I think winning the Desert Classic, which was a major on a par with the others at the time on Sky, and it was a set format. I like set format. That tournament went back and forth from straight leg to set format over the years, but the year I won, it was a set format.
They should bring that back, shouldn't they? It's a great tournament.
But the fun thing about that for me was I was kind of on a downslope, and it was the only Desert Classic I had to play the qualifiers for, because I'd slipped down past 12, I think it was, or 16, and then I came in and I think I lost to Andy Hamilton. There was only 2 days of qualifiers. I lost to Andy the first day, and then I managed to get through the second day, and then I won. So I started off winning that title by losing to Andy Hamilton. Right? But it brought me right back into the picture for a while, and got me going again in terms of the ranking, and I guess was the life I needed to breathe into myself to be around for 2008 in the World Championship.
There have been big old gaps between some of your best or biggest successes in your career. What do you put your ability to stick at it and ride through the tough times and still come back and reach great heights? What do you put that down to?
I'm not sure that stubbornness is an ability.
Just a characteristic.
Yeah, I think it's more just, it won't go away.
Because it's got to be difficult, hasn't it? It's got to be really difficult.
Nobody likes losing, but
then there's financial pressures as well.
There's that. There's that. Yeah, definitely.
How tough did it get at times?
Well, I've managed myself all these years, and I haven't always made all the best decisions in that regard. The problem is, you get in situations early in your career where maybe things are a little tough, and you need to win, and you do, and so you think you can just do that anytime. Right? You sort of get this false sense of security of being able to bail yourself out, say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I need it, it'll be there.
Yeah, I can do it when I need it, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
And I guess that goes
work.
back to what we were talking about when I was at school. Like I can do it the night before, whatever. Do an all-nighter. It'll be done. So the first 3 nights this week, I'll go out and play snooker. I can do that major essay like 10 minutes before, and I get away with it enough times that it worked. But it breeds bad habits.
It does.
Bad habits.
Do you think the game's changed massively over the last 30 years? For the better, exclusively?
Oh, yeah. It's night and day. I mean, from what I grew up, one of my grandfather, he really enjoyed watching the golf and playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
And, so when I was over with him, I'd be watching golf in like the 70s, say, early 70s even. And I think that darts has golf kind of transitioned from 1960s, say, to the early 1980s. I think that's sort of a similar transition in where darts is now, from the 80s in darts, or the 90s even, really, because not a lot happened. The split happened in the 90s, but no real boom of growth happened then. So like I'd see that era of golf from the 60s to the 80s and how much it changed in that time is about the same change we've had in darts from the beginning, from 2000, say. 20 years. Like it's just so comprehensive now, the season, the calendar. I mean, we did play a lot in those days and we had to travel, but we had to, it wouldn't all be the professional game. You'd have some exhibitions maybe, but you'd also have a lot of open tournaments. You'd go to just try and make some cash. Like you had to.
Would you have preferred to be around like at your peak in this era, or would you have?
Financially, obviously.
Yeah.
No. I guess the real question is, would I have been able to be as successful with my tools in my locker now as I was then? I mean, you just don't know. Again, it's apples and oranges, right? I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Darth Maple, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Dan. It's a pleasure. And I'm sorry I didn't give you any answers.